Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. If you enjoy the content, please help support the channel by liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. Your support really helps the channel grow and reach more people. Thanks for being here. Let's get started. Capital, anxiety, and the hidden structure of power. Capital is usually taught as money, wealth, assets, or ownership. But capital can also be understood as a mechanism for extracting energy from human beings. It is not only about taking labor from people. It is about taking their attention, focus, time, imagination, and emotional life. In a universe where consciousness is central, energy is not only physical effort. Energy is attention. To extract energy from a person, it is not enough to make them work. Their mind must also be captured. They must concentrate on the system, worry about it, dream through it, and organize their life around it. Capital becomes powerful when it can command not only the body, but also the inner focus of the human being. The landlord and peasant relationship shows the most basic form of this system. A landlord wants to extract value from the peasant. At first, this value may appear as grain. The peasant grows grain, gives a portion to the landlord, and keeps enough to survive. But this form of extraction has limits. Grain can be stored. A peasant only needs so much. Once the family is fed and there is enough for the future, the peasant has little reason to work endlessly. The natural desire is to live, rest, raise children, celebrate, worship, and enjoy life. The landlord therefore needs more than rent. The landlord needs the peasant to focus completely on production. Over centuries, systems of power develop mechanisms to make people dedicate more and more of their energy to work, money, survival, and anxiety. The first mechanism is the illusion of freedom. Slavery may seem like the most direct way to extract labor, but it is not always the most efficient way to extract energy. A slave works because he is forced. A person who believes he is free may work much harder because he thinks his future depends on his own effort. Freedom becomes more useful than chains when people are convinced that their success or failure belongs entirely to them. This is why equity is so powerful. A company gives a worker a small sense of ownership, and the worker becomes more committed. He works longer. He sacrifices more. He feels that he is building something for himself, even if the larger structure still extracts most of the value. The belief in freedom increases effort. The belief in opportunity deepens commitment. The belief that one has a stake in the system makes the system stronger. The second mechanism is the abstraction of capital. When capital is grain, desire has natural limits. A person only needs enough food to survive, feed the family, and prepare for the future. When capital becomes gold, desire expands, but gold is still physical and limited. It must be found, stored, guarded, and moved. Only certain people will dedicate their lives to chasing it. Money changes everything. Money is both nothing and everything. It is abstract, symbolic, limitless, and endlessly desirable. A person can spend an entire life trying to gain more of it without ever reaching a clear endpoint. Money can become the center of existence because it has no natural limit. You can always want more. Even a person with more money than he could ever spend may still desire more because the object is no longer survival or comfort. The object is accumulation itself. The great innovation of modern society is convincing people that money is God. Once money becomes the highest symbol, people organize their entire lives around it. It becomes security, status, freedom, identity, power, and meaning. It is empty in itself, but it can represent everything. That is why it captures attention so completely. The third mechanism is anxiety. If people are comfortable, secure, and free from fear, they may stop giving their full energy to the system. They may work only as much as they need. They may spend time with family, community, religion, art, and rest. To keep people focused on production, anxiety must be created and maintained. Debt is one of the strongest tools of anxiety. A person borrows money and enjoys the benefit immediately, but then spends years or decades paying it back. Interest makes the debt feel endless. The debt follows the person into every decision. It shapes work, family, housing, risk, and ambition. A person in debt is easier to discipline because fear keeps the mind focused. Inequality is another tool. When a society contains visible poverty, the middle class becomes afraid of falling. The poor become a warning. Their suffering teaches everyone else to work harder, obey more, save more, compete more, and accept more stress. Poverty does not only punish the poor. It disciplines the people above them. Wealth destruction is another mechanism. War, depression, crisis, and economic collapse destroy what people have stored. If peasants build a granary and become secure, the landlord can burn it down. Once security is destroyed, people return to desperate labor. They rebuild. They work harder. They accept conditions they might have resisted before. War does not only expand capitalism into new spaces. It also destroys accumulated security and forces people back into anxiety. The economic cycle is often described as natural, but it can also be seen as artificial. Boom and collapse, expansion and crisis, prosperity and destruction, all keep people trapped in motion. A society that becomes too wealthy may become lazy and complacent. A society that is regularly shocked by crisis remains alert, afraid, and productive. This is why modern society can be the wealthiest in human history and still be deeply miserable. People have more technology, more goods, more comfort, and more choices, yet they are anxious, indebted, exhausted, and spiritually empty. The system has learned how to extract energy more efficiently. It gives the illusion of freedom, makes money the center of life, and uses anxiety to keep people focused. When anxiety becomes too intense, revolt becomes possible. If people realize too clearly that they are being exploited, they may turn against the system. The solution for the landlord class is mobility. The elite can move. Capital can move. Wealth can leave one country and enter another. The people remain trapped in the consequences, but the money escapes. This is transnational capital. Transnational capital has no loyalty to nation, people, place, culture, or community. It has loyalty only to itself. It moves wherever it is safest, wherever taxes are lower, wherever labor is cheaper, wherever regulation is weaker, wherever opportunity is greater. The wealthy may live in Dubai, Hong Kong, Singapore, London, New York, or anywhere else that protects capital. Their home is not a nation. Their home is the network that protects their wealth. This movement creates a major problem. If capital moves across borders, how does it know whom to trust? How do elites from different countries cooperate? How do they transfer wealth, coordinate interests, hide assets, and protect themselves from social anger? The answer is secret societies. Secret societies and transnational capital are linked because both are systems of trust among elites who cannot fully rely on public institutions. The peasant class can live through organized religion, family, nation, and community. The elite class requires a different belief system because its role is different. The peasants want to live a simple life, make money, raise families, believe in God, and enjoy stability. The elite class has to control the peasants, extract energy, manage society, and do terrible things when necessary to maintain power. The religion of the peasant teaches goodness, obedience, humility, charity, and hope. The religion of the elite must deal with power, cruelty, secrecy, violence, and control. The elite cannot always worship the same moral God as the people they exploit. They need a higher force that can justify actions ordinary morality would condemn. This is where Satan, Saturn, or other hidden gods enter the structure. The name can change, but the function remains. The elite class needs a force above ordinary morality. If terrible things must be done, the individual can say he did not act from himself. He obeyed a higher power. He served order. He served necessity. He served history. He served the hidden God. Authority allows people to surrender responsibility. The Milgram experiment showed that ordinary people can inflict pain when an authority figure tells them to do it. The person no longer feels fully responsible. The action is transferred upward. I was ordered. I was told. I was serving the system. Secret societies use this same principle. They create a structure where responsibility is dissolved into hierarchy, ritual, and obedience. The individual no longer feels like the source of the act. He becomes a servant of something larger. If war is started, an economy is destroyed, or people are sacrificed, the member can believe that he was not acting as himself. The higher force demanded it. Conformity is the second principle. The Solomon Asch experiment showed that people can deny what they see with their own eyes if the group around them insists on another answer. A person may know the truth privately, but the pressure of the group can make him conform publicly. Over time, he may even begin to believe the group's falsehood. Authority and conformity together create the foundation of secret power. Authority removes responsibility. Conformity removes independent judgment. A person inside such a structure can do things he would never do alone. Secret societies are built through hierarchy. At the top are those who understand the real purpose. Beneath them are initiates who believe they are entering something noble, spiritual, powerful, or exclusive. The deeper one goes, the more loyalty is demanded. The more one participates, the more compromised one becomes. Once compromised, the person becomes easier to control. Ritual is central because ritual creates shared guilt, shared secrecy, and shared identity. Those who participate in dark acts become bound to each other. A terrible act can create brotherhood because everyone involved now carries the same secret. They cannot betray the group without betraying themselves. This is how people are turned into tools of power. Trauma breaks the old identity. Dependency creates loyalty. Secrecy creates control. Ritual creates belonging. The person becomes tied to the group not only by belief, but by fear, shame, memory, and reward. The same pattern can appear in violent gangs, military societies, cults, and intelligence networks. Young people without stability are especially vulnerable. If they are isolated, abused, traumatized, then given protection by the same structure that harmed them, they may become deeply loyal. The person who destroys their old reality can become the person they cling to for survival. This is the logic of programming. Trauma can create dissociation. The mind separates itself from unbearable memory. The handler, leader, or master then becomes linked to the hidden part of the person's mind. The person may not fully remember what happened, but the emotional bond remains. Commands can still be obeyed. Loyalty can still operate beneath conscious awareness. This system is ancient. It appears in different forms across history. Sparta used trauma, separation, discipline, and controlled loyalty to create fearless soldiers. The child was taken from the family, placed into hardship, trained through violence, and bonded to older male authority. The result was a military society where soldiers obeyed with extraordinary intensity. Assassin societies used altered states, pleasure, promise of paradise, secrecy, and loyalty to create killers who would obey commands. The method was to break ordinary fear and replace it with devotion to the master. Sex, trauma, drugs, and religious promise could combine to produce extreme obedience. These are not accidents. They are technologies of human control. They turn ordinary people into instruments. They overcome natural moral resistance. They make people willing to kill, spy, betray, sacrifice, and obey. Transnational capital develops through historical stages. The major stages are Venice, the Dutch Republic, England, and America. Each represents a merchant oligarchy. Each is controlled not primarily by kings or public democracy, but by private interests. Each uses banking, naval power, diplomacy, intelligence, and secret networks to extend influence. Venice was one of the earliest merchant oligarchies. After the fall of Rome, powerful families looked for safety and opportunity. Venice was protected by marshes and had few natural resources. Its weakness became its strength. Because it could not rely on land wealth, it turned to trade, piracy, banking, diplomacy, and maritime networks. It became wealthy through trade between Europe and the East, especially the spice trade. Venice functioned as a parasite on larger empires. It could bribe officials, secure privileges, build trade routes, negotiate with Byzantines, Ottomans, Mongols, and others. Venetian merchants and explorers moved across the world to build networks. Marco Polo represents this spirit of merchant expansion, exploration, intelligence, and trade. The Dutch Republic became more powerful because it combined merchant oligarchy with Protestant energy. Calvinism taught that wealth could signal divine favor. Hard work, discipline, saving, and reinvestment became religious duties. Spending on pleasure was sinful, but accumulating and investing were signs of election. This created a society of intense economic focus. The Dutch became extremely energetic. Their merchants, banks, and companies spread across the world. The Dutch East India Company became almost a nation of its own. It had armies, ships, currency, laws, territory, and monopoly power. It was not just a company. It was a state-like corporation serving transnational capital. The Protestant Reformation changed the relationship between human beings, God, and money. Catholicism emphasized orthodoxy, hierarchy, and works. The believer had to obey the church, follow rituals, and remain inside the structure. This created distance from God, corruption in the priesthood, and resentment among people who wanted direct spiritual access. Protestantism offered direct access to God, equality before Scripture, and justification by faith. But these solutions created new problems. Direct access led to confusion. Without church hierarchy, different people could create different interpretations. Protestantism split into many branches. Justification by faith created anxiety because no one could be certain they truly believed in the right way. Calvin's doctrine of double predestination intensified this anxiety. If God had already decided who would be saved and who would be damned, the believer needed signs of election. Wealth became one of those signs. Hard work, discipline, success, and accumulation could be read as evidence that God favored a person. But the money could not be wasted on pleasure, so it had to be invested. This fed the banks and merchant oligarchies. The Dutch Republic became wealthy because it transformed religious anxiety into economic energy. England inherited and expanded this system. The Dutch Republic was rich, but vulnerable because it sat on the European continent and could be invaded. England was safer because it was an island. In 1688, William of Orange was invited to become King of England. This allowed Dutch capital and English power to merge. In 1694, the Bank of England was created. The Bank of England was a private bank guaranteed by Parliament. This was a major innovation. If private bankers made money, they kept the profit. If they lost money through lending to the state, the public guaranteed repayment. The people became the security behind private finance. Before this, lending to monarchs was risky. A king could die, lose a war, be overthrown, or refuse repayment. Lending to Parliament was different. The debt was attached to the nation itself. As long as England survived, the people had to pay. This allowed England to finance wars on a scale previously impossible. Britain could fight Napoleon not by defeating him directly every time, but by financing coalition after coalition against him. The Bank of England allowed Britain to borrow from the future and from across space. It turned time, debt, and empire into military power. After Napoleon, Britain became the great global empire. It used its financial system, navy, corporations, and local collaborators to extract wealth from the world. India became one of the clearest examples. The East India Company operated as a corporate empire. It extracted wealth, destroyed local manufacturing, turned India toward raw materials and agriculture, and forced it to buy British manufactured goods. India's wealth collapsed as Britain's industrial power grew. This was not done by Britain alone. Local elites were co-opted. The financial system allowed Indian elites to move wealth into British-controlled banks and safe havens. Once their wealth was stored abroad, their interests shifted away from their own people and toward the empire. The same pattern appeared in China through the opium trade. Local elites helped foreign capital penetrate the country. The system works by separating elites from their nations. Once elites can store wealth abroad, they no longer need their own country to prosper. They can profit from its decline. This system still exists through offshore banking, tax havens, money laundering networks, and private financial shelters. The British Empire may have formally ended, but the financial architecture continued. Elites from Africa, Asia, and other regions can extract wealth from their nations and store it in offshore systems connected to London and other financial centers. British capital later moved into America. America was industrializing, and individual figures appeared to monopolize entire industries. Railroads, steel, oil, and finance were concentrated into the hands of men like Vanderbilt, Carnegie, Rockefeller, and Morgan. The official story presents them as examples of the American dream, self-made men who rose through talent and hard work. But the scale of their monopolies raises deeper questions. How did individuals acquire enough money to buy whole industries? Why did monopolies become national rather than regional? Why were critical resources and infrastructure not made public? The answer given here is that British capital financed these figures. Americans would not have accepted direct British ownership after fighting a revolution against Britain. So British money needed American agents. These industrialists became the public faces of deeper capital flows. The same pattern continues in the modern technology world. Figures like Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Google, and ChatGPT are presented as individual success stories. Young innovators follow a dream, build a company, and become billionaires. But many of these technologies began from public or military systems. The internet came from military research. Digital surveillance, search, social media, and artificial intelligence all serve functions useful to power. If the Pentagon directly offered people a free surveillance network, people would resist. But if a private company offers the same thing as a social platform, search engine, or helpful technology, people adopt it willingly. Private companies become the friendly face of military and intelligence systems. The Federal Reserve completes the American version of this financial structure. Created in the early 20th century, it gave private banking interests control over money creation. The government borrows money at interest, and the people carry the debt. This means America is not ruled by public democracy in any real sense. It is ruled through private banking, debt, and capital. The Bretton Woods system made the United States dollar the center of the world economy. The dollar was promised as good as gold. In 1971, the gold link was broken. The dollar was no longer backed by gold, but it remained central through oil. The petrodollar system meant that oil had to be bought in dollars. This kept global demand for the dollar alive. The deeper shift was the movement from gold to pure abstraction. Money no longer needed a physical foundation. It became belief, power, debt, military force, and global habit. At this stage, money fully replaced God in the modern system. It became the invisible center around which nations, corporations, workers, and states organized their lives. America itself was shaped by secret society symbolism and networks. Its founders included Freemasons. Washington, D.C. contains occult and Masonic symbolism. The dollar bill carries the pyramid, the all-seeing eye, and language of a new world order. These symbols are not decorative accidents. They express the deeper structure of the system. The movement from Venice to the Dutch Republic, from the Dutch Republic to England, and from England to America, is the story of capital becoming more abstract, more mobile, more powerful, and more capable of extracting energy from humanity. Each stage increases the power of banking. Each stage increases the reach of trade. Each stage increases the use of secret networks. Each stage weakens older attachments to land, church, nation, and people. At the same time, each stage increases anxiety. People become wealthier, but less secure. Societies become richer, but more unstable. Technology advances, but human beings become more exhausted. Money grows, but meaning disappears. The final problem for the system is abundance. When people become too comfortable, they stop working with the same desperation. They become lazy from the perspective of capital. They may question the system. They may demand a fairer life. They may seek peace, family, spirituality, and rest. So wealth must be destroyed again. Crisis must return. Depression must return. War must return. The economy must be shaken. People must be reminded that survival is not guaranteed. Their attention must be forced back into work, debt, fear, and production. This is the cycle of capital. It accumulates wealth, then destroys wealth. It creates anxiety, then offers money as the cure. It gives people freedom, then traps them in debt. It makes money God, then makes everyone worship through labor. It creates comfort, then burns down the granary. The hidden structure of power is not only political. It is psychological, financial, spiritual, and ritual. Capital extracts energy. Secret societies coordinate elites. Banking extracts across time and space. War destroys security. Debt captures the future. Money replaces God. Anxiety keeps the human mind focused on the system. This is why the modern world feels so strange. Humanity has never had more wealth, yet people are more anxious than ever. There has never been more freedom in appearance, yet people feel trapped. There has never been more information, yet people feel more manipulated. There has never been more money, yet people feel poorer in spirit. The system works because it does not only own resources. It owns attention. It does not only command labor. It commands fear. It does not only control governance. It controls imagination. It does not only extract wealth from the present. It borrows from the future and makes future generations pay. Capital is not simply money. Capital is organized energy extraction. It is the process of capturing human focus and directing it toward the goals of power. The more abstract capital becomes, the more total its control becomes. Grain can feed a family. Gold can be stored. Money can rule the soul. The modern world is built on this transformation. The peasant no longer sees the landlord clearly. The master no longer stands in the field. The master is now debt, rent, inflation, crisis, career, status, mortgage, investment, tax, currency, and fear. The old landlord has become transnational capital. And because transnational capital can move, hide, coordinate, and return after collapse, it survives the destruction it creates. The people fight, suffer, rebuild, and begin again. Capital waits, moves, protects itself, and comes back when the ashes have cooled. This is the hidden logic of the world today.